was instituting the Lord's Supper, as we call it, he said, "Do this in remembrance of me." It is written all over tables in some churches, and it's very significant. Do this in remembrance of me. During this time of communion, we remember Jesus, and we remember the sacrifice he made. The bread represents the body that was broken, and the juice represents the blood that was shed for us. And sometimes when we're taking communion, we often get in this habit of, okay, this represents the juice, this represents the blood, this represents the body. And we just take it and we move on. But do we stop and remember what those elements stand for? When we remember somebody here on this earth, whether they moved away, they've passed, or it's just somebody that we haven't seen for a few days and they come to mind, what comes to mind when we remember them? Do we remember happy times? Do you remember sad times? Or do you remember funny times? When we remember somebody here on earth, that comes to mind. There's a wide variety of things that we remember about them. We remember times when they've blessed us, when they've helped us out. But do we do the same with Jesus when we remember him? When we remember Jesus, do we remember how he has blessed us in the past week, how he kept us safe during our travels, how he provided food on the table for us? Do we remember how he used us to bless others? Or do we just focus on the sacrifice that was made? And sometimes, during this time of communion, some people are scared of communion because when they remember Jesus, they remember what it was like to have a relationship with him and that he now feels so far away. But he's not that far away. He is right there saying, "Look at me, remember me, and turn toward me." And during communion, this is the time when we get to look back through the past week and not only remember the sacrifice that he made for us, in hopes that one day we would look to him and get to be with him in heaven. But do we also remember the blessings that he has given us, the joy that he has given us? And maybe this is the time where you're that person who feels like Jesus is so far away. This is the time that you can look back to him and say, "Jesus, I'm turning back to you. I'm looking back to you." Now, if we go back and think about that person that we thought about, when do we think about them? When do we remember them? We remember them in our day-to-day lives and throughout our week. Do we do that with Jesus? Or do we just remember him for the few moments that we're here at church once a week? As a Christian, we're not just a Christian on Sundays. We're not a Jesus follower for the hour and a half that we're here in the church building. But we're called to live it out throughout our daily lives throughout the week. And do we remember Jesus throughout that week as well? Or do we leave him here at church and say, "Jesus, you're a nice hobby"? When we remember Jesus and remember that sacrifice that he made with that bread, with that juice, we aren't just remembering the sacrifice he made, but we're remembering everything about him. And so during communion, we get that opportunity to remember Jesus, who he is, as a whole, not just in part. A math problem that I like, that does not work with human math, but works with God math, is Jesus is 100% human and 100% God. Do we remember the 100% of who Jesus is? So during this time, I invite you to search yourselves, to remember all of Jesus, what he did for us, not just dying on the cross and going through an excruciating death on our behalf because he loves us so much, but we're also remembering how he blesses us throughout our week, because we often overlook those blessings. We get too busy. We just brush right on by them. In communion every week, we get to look back and say, yes, I remembered him. Thank you for putting food on my table. Thank you for getting me here safely. And thank you for dying on the cross for my sins. Communion isn't just some little snack break that we have in our service, but a dedicated time to remember Jesus and to worship him. And that's why we also sing another song after the communion message. So I invite you guys today, when you take the bread and take the juice, remember him wholly and fully for who he is and what he has done for you. And when you are ready, we invite you to stand and worship with us again.